Welcome back to Hearts Wine from Heart's Distractions, the space where we slow down, pour something honest, and talk about love the way it actually shows up in real life. Not the polished version, not the highlight reel, but the messy, meaningful, sometimes uncomfortable truth of it all just for you. Today, we're talking about something a lot of us grew up believing in, even if we don't realize how deeply it shaped us: the idea of soulmates. The belief that there is one perfect person out there who will get us, complete us, and make love feel effortless once we find them. And listen, it sounds beautiful. It feels hopeful. It gives us something to chase, but it also sets a lot of couples up for disappointment, confusion, and quiet self doubt when real love doesn't look the way we were promised it would. Because nobody really tells us what happens after the butterflies fade. Nobody talks about what love looks like when life gets heavy, when communication breaks down, when expectations go unmet, or when two people have to keep choosing each other through change. So, in this episode, we're pulling the curtain back on the soulmate myth. We're talking about why the idea of perfect love is a fairy tale and how chasing it can actually distract us from the kind of love that lasts. The kind of love that's built, not discovered. The kind of love that grows, stretches, and sometimes challenges us to show up differently. Whether you're dating, engaged, married, rebuilding, or just questioning what love is supposed to feel like at this stage of your life, this conversation, this episode is for you. So, why don't you go ahead and go grab your glass, take a breath, and settle in? And let's talk about love without the fantasy. So, let's start by being honest with ourselves for a moment, shall we? Most of us didn't wake up one day and randomly decide to believe in soulmates. This idea was handed to us early, wrapped in fairy tales, movies, songs, and social media love stories that told us love would arrive, feel magical, and somehow make everything else in life fall into place. We were taught that there is one person out there who will see us, understand us without explanation, and love us perfectly. And once we find them, the hard parts of life are supposed to get easier. But nobody really explains what happens when love stops feeling magical. Nobody talks about what happens when the butterflies settle down, when real life shows up, when misunderstandings happen, when conflict enters the room. Instead, we're left wondering if something is wrong with us or with our relationship. We start questioning whether we choose or have chosen the wrong person instead of asking whether we were taught the wrong expectations. The soulmate fantasy makes love feel fragile. It teaches us that love should feel effortless and that struggle is a sign of failure. And that belief quietly sets people up for disappointment because real relationships are built between two imperfect humans, not characters written to complete each other. Listen, I'm here to tell y'all the truth, y'all. Let's get into it tonight. But here's where the problem deepens. When we believe in perfect love, we begin expecting perfection from our partner. We expect them to always know what we need, to always respond the right way, and to never miss a moment that matters to us. And when they don't, and they won't, let's be real, we internalize that disappointment. Instead of saying, we need to talk, we start thinking, if they were my soulmate, I wouldn't have to explain this. Instead of saying, we're growing, we think, this shouldn't be this hard. Marriage and family therapy research shows that long term relationship satisfaction has far less to do with how compatible people feel in the beginning and far more to do with how couples navigate conflict, repair emotional injuries, and stay emotionally responsive over time. Love doesn't fail because it isn't perfect. Love fails when couples believe it was supposed to be. The soulmate myth doesn't teach us to repair, it teaches us how to replace. And that belief quietly encourages people to walk away instead of working through it all. Now, can we talk about chemistry? Because chemistry is powerful. Chemistry is intoxicating. It's the spark that makes you feel chosen, desired, alive. And chemistry can absolutely draw two people together. But chemistry alone cannot hold a relationship together. What many people don't realize is that chemistry often shows up where familiarity exists, not safety. Sometimes chemistry is tied to attachment wounds, unresolved emotional needs, or patterns we learned early in life. That doesn't mean the connection isn't real, but it does mean it deserves examination. Couples often mistake intensity for intimacy. They believe that because the connection feels strong, it must be right. But intensity doesn't teach you how to communicate, how to compromise, or how to show up consistently when life gets hard. Butterflies are exciting, but butterflies don't raise children, manage finances, navigate grief, or repair emotional damage. People do. And when chemistry fades, as it naturally does, compatibility and emotional skills are what remain. One of the quietest ways the soulmate myth damages relationships is by changing how couples see conflict. Let's think about it. Conflict stops being normal and starts feeling like a threat. Disagreements become evidence that something is wrong instead of opportunities to understand each other better. Couples begin avoiding hard conversation because they're afraid of what those conversations might mean. They swallow their needs. They minimize their feelings. They convince themselves that silence is peace when it's really distance. I've seen so many couples who still deeply love each other drift apart simply because they never learned how to repair. They weren't taught that healthy love includes discomfort. They were taught that love should feel easy. And when it didn't, they withdrew. Real love doesn't fall apart because of conflict, it falls apart because of unresolved conflict. And the soulmate myth doesn't teach resolution, it teaches unrealistic expectations. This is the part people struggle with the most. Love is not something you find once and then keep forever without effort. Love is something you choose over and over again, especially when it's inconvenient. Long term love requires intention. It requires deciding to stay curious instead of critical, connected instead of distant, accountable instead of defensive. It requires choosing growth over fantasy. Marriage and family therapy research consistently shows that couples who view love as a commitment rather than a feeling experience greater long term stability and satisfaction. Not because they feel amazing all the time, but because they understand that feelings change and commitment carries the relationship through those changes. Love isn't about always feeling in love, it's about being willing to love when feelings shift, routines get heavy, and life becomes demanding. That's not settling, that's maturity. So, most of what you believe about love wasn't learned in adulthood, it was absorbed in childhood. You learned love by watching how it was modeled or not modeled in your home. You learned what was normal by what was familiar. And now social media adds another layer. We're constantly exposed to curated images of love that make real relationships feel inadequate. Highlight reels create silent pressure to perform happiness instead of building intimacy. The truth is, real love doesn't look perfect. It looks consistent. It looks honest. It looks like repair after rupture and effort after exhaustion. When we stop measuring our relationships against fantasy and start measuring them by emotional safety, respect, and growth, because love becomes something sustainable, not something not something we're constantly afraid of losing. Here's the part I want you to really sit with, because this is where everything shifts. Real love doesn't arrive fully formed. It reveals itself over time. And most often, it shows up not in the big romantic moments, but in the quiet, ordinary ones. The moments nobody posts, nobody applauds, and nobody romanticizes. Real love looks like emotional safety. It's being able to tell the truth without fearing punishment. It's knowing you can be honest about your feelings, even the uncomfortable ones, and still be met with care. Real love allows room for growth, change, and imperfection without threatening the relationship every time something shifts. It looks like accountability, not perfection, not getting it right all the time, but being willing to say, I missed that, or I hurt you, or I need to do better. Real love doesn't avoid responsibility, it actually leans into it. And real love looks like repair. It's not the absence of conflict, it's the willingness to come back together after disconnection. It's knowing that love isn't measured by how little you hurt each other, but by how well you heal together. That kind of love isn't flashy. It doesn't always feel exciting, but it is deeply grounding. And over time, it creates something far more powerful than fantasy. Trust me. Now, I do want to be clear about something because this part often gets misunderstood. Letting go of the soulmate myth does not mean lowering your standards. It does not mean tolerating emotional neglect, disrespect, or harm. It does not mean staying in relationships that continuously drain you or compromise your values. What it means is releasing the expectation that love should be effortless and replacing it with the understanding that healthy love requires effort from both people. There's a big difference between choosing imperfection and accepting incompatibility. Real love doesn't ask you to abandon yourself. It asks you to show up honestly and expect the same in return. When couples stop chasing fantasy, they often discover something unexpected, which is freedom. Freedom to be real, freedom to be human, freedom to grow without fearing that change means the relationship is doomed. Love becomes less about proving you choose the one and more about asking, are we choosing each other well? That shift alone can transform how couples relate, communicate, and commit. So, y'all know I'm always dropping some jewels and definitely giving y'all some good examples, right? So, before we close this out, I want to slow it down and make it practical because all of this can sound good in theory, but love doesn't happen in theory. It happens in real homes, real conversations, real moments of misunderstanding. So let me give you some examples of how the soulmate myth, chemistry, expectations, and choice actually show up in couples' lives. I want you to listen and notice which ones sound familiar, not to judge yourself, but to recognize yourself, because that's what we're here about, right? We're here to drop the truth and to help you have some awareness in yourself as well as within your relationship. Think about a dating couple who feels an instant connection. Everything is exciting. They text all day, stay up late talking, and feel deeply drawn to each other. But the first time they disagree, really disagree, it feels alarming. Instead of seeing conflict as normal, one or both of them start pulling back emotionally, thinking, if this were my soulmate, it wouldn't feel this tense. So instead of learning how to communicate, they quietly question whether the relationship is right at all. Or how about we picture a married couple who's been married for a few years? The chemistry isn't gone, but it's quieter now. Life has filled the space, work stress, kids, responsibilities, exhaustion. Y'all know the rest. One partner starts feeling disappointed, not because love is missing, but because it doesn't feel the way it used to. They scroll social media and see couples traveling, laughing, posting anniversary tributes, and they start wondering, did we lose something? And instead of talking about their needs, they internalize the belief that something is wrong. Then there's the couple who deeply loves each other but avoids conflict at all costs. They grew up believing that love should be peaceful, so they interpret disagreement as danger. They keep things fine on the surface, but underneath, resentment builds. And over time, emotional distance grows, not because love isn't there, but because no one taught them that healthy love includes hard conversations and repair. I think about couples where chemistry was intense in the beginning. The relationship felt electric, passionate arguments followed by passionate reconciliation. When the intensity fades, they don't know how to connect without drama. They mistake calm for boredom and start chasing the feeling they had instead of building the stability they need. I also see long-term couples who have changed over the years. One partner has grown emotionally, learned new boundaries, or developed new needs. The other feels confused, thinking, this isn't who I married. Instead of seeing growth as a natural part of love, they see it as loss because they believed love was supposed to stay the same. And for many LGBTQ plus couples, there's often added pressure to make the relationship work perfectly. After fighting for acceptance, visibility, or safety, admitting struggle can feel like failure. So instead of asking for support, couples suffer silently, believing love should be enough to fix everything on its own, leaving them with no support system. What all of these situations have in common isn't lack of love, it's unrealistic expectations about what love is supposed to look like. When couples let go of the soulmate myth, something powerful happens. They stop asking, is this the right person? And start asking, how do we show up better for each other? They stop fearing imperfection and start practicing honesty. They stop measuring love by feeling and start measuring it by effort, care, and repair. And that shift right there is where relationships begin to feel more grounded, more secure, and more sustainable. If you're listening to this with your partner or even thinking about your relationship while listening, I want you to pause here. Maybe take a sip. If you got some wine, if you got some tea, or even a glass of water, take that sip and then take a few breaths. Then ask yourself gently and honestly, what did I believe love was supposed to fix for me? Where did I learn that belief? And how has that belief shaped the way I show up in relationships? Now, if you're listening together, ask each other this. When love feels hard between us, do we see that as failure or as feedback? Do we talk about expectations or do we silently hold each other to them? These aren't questions meant to blame or shame. They're invitations. Invitations to replace fantasy with curiosity, to replace disappointment with dialogue, because love grows best where honesty lives. That's why I do this podcast, y'all. We got to let it all out, all the honesty, as well as the heartful truths. If there's one thing I hope you take away from today, it's this: love was never meant to be perfect, it was meant to be real. The idea of soulmates makes love feel rare and fragile, like something you can lose if you don't get it right. But real love isn't that delicate. It's resilient. It stretches, it adapts, it definitely grows with you. When we stop chasing the fantasy of perfect love, we stop living in constant fear of disappointment. We stop interpreting every challenge as a sign we choose wrong. And instead, we begin asking better questions, questions that invite connection instead of distance. Real love is built in the moments where we choose to stay present instead of pulling away. It's built when you speak honestly instead of silently, hoping your partner will figure it out. It's built when you allow your relationship to evolve instead of trying to preserve a version of love that no longer fits. And yes, real love will disappoint you sometimes, not because it's failing, but because it's human. Because two people with different histories, needs, and wounds are learning how to meet in the middle. That doesn't make love weaker, it makes it deeper. The soulmate myth tells us love should complete us. Real love reminds us we were already whole and that partnership is about walking alongside someone, not losing yourself in them. So if you're in a relationship that doesn't feel like a fairy tale, that doesn't mean it's broken. It might mean it's real. And real love, when nurtured, when protected, when chosen intentionally, can be far more meaningful than any fantasy ever promised. Let love be honest. Let love be imperfect. And let love be chosen. So if you enjoyed this episode, I want you to go and subscribe to our YouTube channel at Hearts Wine from Hearts Distractions on YouTube, or definitely some exclusive episodes of content that will be coming your way soon. Visit our website at www.aliciasdistractions.com for more resources and updates. If you haven't yet, go purchase a copy of my poetry book, Distractions of the Heart, on Amazon. And just for some of you listeners out there, definitely my couples, there will be a book coming hopefully soon in 2026. Let's hope it drops by summertime. So keep a lookout for that and follow us on social media on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. As we close out this episode, whether you're listening alone or with your partner, I hope you walk away with feeling lighter, less pressured to be perfect, less afraid of the hard moment, and more open to the kind of love that grows with you over time. So I definitely want you to be able to pour another glass if you need to. Sit with what came up for you during this episode. And remember, love doesn't have to be flawless to be fulfilling. Cheers.